This awkward bit there. Okay, cool. There's just one other person that might be joining us in a minute, but Hannah, did you want to? Oh, there she is. There he is. Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hi everyone.
I guess this is a moment, Hannah, to welcome everyone to the Eco Corner.
Yes.
You were particularly keen to kind of frame it like that because, well, you tell us where's the inspiration for that?
Yeah, so when I joined MAE, I really wanted to get across the importance of early years. It's something I really care about. I really care about connecting children with nature. Right from training, 20 odd years ago, in Scarborough, getting children out in nature. My QTS, I did my specialism in early years. I was really lucky. I got to do my last teaching practice in a nursery school, and it's really inspired me to carry on that. And when I was talking about, sort of doing an online discussion about early years, I was like, all nurseries, school settings, they have, you've got your construction corner, you've got your book corner, you've got your small world corner. And I just thought, oh, it'd be really nice to have an eco corner. A lot of us have a nature table or an investigation station, and I think it just embeds that early yearsness.
Yeah. Shall I, Hannah, I'll just for a moment introduce a bit more of the Ministry of Eco Education. So
Yeah.
we're a charity funded by the Green Britain Foundation, which was set up by Dale Vince, the founder of Ecotricity, the UK's greenest energy company. He also owns Forest Green Rovers, which is the greenest football club in the world. And because of that funding, we're really fortunate to be able to have a network of part-time teachers across the country who are helping support teachers to be able to weave sustainability throughout their teaching. And the bit that we're trying to do is help to amplify and bring together all of the support, resources, opportunities from all the other organizations and kind of present them to teachers in ways which kind of is more useful for them, kind of in a more logical framework. And what we're also trying to do is connect with academics and organizations and charities and help bring their research and understanding to teachers. So kind of act as a bit of a medium in that. And now we've had early years materials for a while, and actually. I guess there's some of the earliest we had, but they've been in different iterations and they've been inspired by different teachers and practices. And it was really fortunate to have Hannah join us, I guess almost more than a year
Well,
ago
September.
in September, yeah. And Hannah, I guess I have to say, you are yourself an award-winning teacher in the early years kind of sustainability space, and you've got so many years of experience yourself. So it was really fortunate for us to then be able to kind of bring that into the framework and weave that in. And I guess we've just had a moment now where we've thought we should really make some noise about these and really help share that and talk about it, whilst also facilitate this kind of wider discussion as well. Now, Hannah, I guess am I handing it back to you to talk a bit more about some of that, or are we going to go straight on to the other?
I think we'll introduce our speakers and then we'll go back and we'll talk about the new early years bits we've got on the website.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Diane Boyd, somebody who I followed for a while through different publications, and have really enjoyed reading about. I've also used your advice from the DFE to help do our climate action plan. So, Diane, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Diane. My PhD is in early childhood education sustainability, and I'm very passionate about recognizing that early childhood is the most important stage of development in terms of sustainability. It's when fundamental values and attitudes are formed, and therefore I sort of can't stop talking about it, basically. So I'm just going to talk you through the role of early childhood education for sustainability, and the aims that I will cover in the next few minutes are um, demonstrating how the roots of sustainability are holistic and are part of early childhood and why it's relevant. I will demonstrate the three pillars of sustainability and again how they're interconnected within early childhood. and to highlight how early childhood is interconnected with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals too. So I created this diagram to just sort of like basically show the interconnection. You have early childhood sustainability as the umbrella term, and underneath it, you've got the three pillars of sustainability: social, cultural, environmental, and economic. And probably everybody's the most familiar with the environmental, but it's really important to recognize that all three pillars must not be viewed in isolation, because it weakens their processes and their role. We must always recognize that the three pillars are interconnected and holistic in the same way as early childhood education is. And I've positioned it on top of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals from UNESCO, because they too, like early childhood and the three pillars, are interconnected and must be not be viewed in isolation. So I'm just going to now talk you through how the three pillars are represented in early childhood. In early childhood, it's important that we recognize that society and culture are an important part of early childhood. We need to embed local cultures and traditions into practice. So, for instance, in one of these images, you can see in a little girl learning to use the Italian pasta machine. And that is something that she's come through from intergenerationally through her nonna, and that this is brought into the setting and shared with all of the other children. So it's important that we engage with elders' wisdoms. We are very fortunate there are plenty of people beyond the school gates and the nursery gates that will be only too happy to help and support with these local cultures and traditions. It's also important we participate in all aspects of society and children understand. So the picture on the top left is of early years children who'd made a wreath for Armistice Day, and that they understand from a historical perspective intergenerational stories from the past. And the final picture is of a little girl who was in the museum and starting the process of mark making to leave a message around what she considered to be the Sustainable Development Goals and what we could do for the future. So social sustainability is concerned with all those social, cultural, and political issues that affect our lives. And therefore, it's very important that we recognize that agency and children's voices and participation must be a crucial part of the early childhood pedagogy that we have within our classroom. I have put some links at the bottom of this slide of how you could link it to SDG 4, quality education, SDG 8, decent work and economics, SDG 9, industry and infrastructure, SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, SDG 16, peace and strong institutions, and number 17, the partnership to all of the goals. So that's social cultural pillar. The environmental pillar, I think, is probably where we are most familiar in terms of early childhood. The roots of early childhood are in Froebel, Steiner, Malaguzzi, Montessori, and Macmillan, who all advocated that children are a crucial part of nature and that they are part of nature, and it's an ecological part of nature. We are not separated from the environment. We are part of the environment. And therefore, really, in a sense, we should be advocating for ecological development to be a crucial part of all aspects of early childhood rather than just focusing on the traditional prime areas. But it's really important that we engage children with the environment as early as possible, because children cannot understand and be part of the environment if they don't have a relationship for it. So it's really important that we have those relationships right from the beginning, and that children understand not only sort of like looking after plants and that sort of aspect, but they also recognize the non-human world and that they have rights as well, because you want children to be wisdom shepherds. You want them to be the advocate for the worm, the advocate for the hedgerow. You want them to care, and they can only care if they are part of the environment. And again, I've linked at the bottom to some of the SDGs, different ones there. SDG 1, no poverty, SDG 2, zero hunger, SDG 13, climate action, 14, life below the sea, and SDG 15, life on earth. As you can see, they are very interconnected and very easily identifiable in terms of holistic early childhood. The economic pillar, research demonstrates, is the least understood and the least in terms of practitioners' confidence in recognizing what they are doing. But in terms of early childhood, it is important that we start very young with children and understanding economic awareness. The Good Childhood Report of 2023 highlighted that by 18, young people are not familiar with financial concerns and that they are worried about the future and they're worried about things like food banks. So it's very important that from early childhood that we recognise that economic awareness is something that we need to embed into society and into our settings. The bottom image that you can see is from a children's centre in Carlisle, where the children have been growing their own vegetables, but rather than just growing their own vegetables, they then bag them up and either donate them to food banks or they take them outside and they sell them on the street to passers-by and to family and friends. Therefore, the children are becoming familiar with and using real money, and therefore understanding trade is for goods. They are also recognising that by supporting the local high street, so therefore through neighbourhood walks, you encourage children to become familiar with local shops, the terminology, the economic science, so they are familiar with the language of things like greengrocer, grocer, and that they also have relationships. Again, it's this crucial idea of relationships with the people within that shop. So going into the greengrocers and being able to differentiate between pink ladies and gala apples and having conversations like that. By supporting the community, children and their families will then place greater value on social cohesion and local cultures. So being aware of the different communities that are outside that you could audit that could become part of your setting. For instance, allotments. A lot of allotments are run by volunteers and who would only be too happy to come in and work with children around the economic and environmental and social sustainability. It's also important that we encourage children to recognise that if we're going into the local shops rather than getting into a car, that we're encouraging children to understand the impact on the environment through car journeys. So therefore, choices of transport, the burden of producing, using and disposing of goods and services is something that we talk about and demonstrate within our practice. Another aspect of equity is the economic pillar is equity for all, so that we are recognizing that everybody has the right for basic needs of key consumption goods and services such as food, water, health and education and shelter. This is the same as sort of inclusive practice within the UIFS, and it links to SDG 1, 2 and 10. The image at the top is of children going from the local children's centre in Liverpool and using real money in B&Q when they were buying their own goods. So children were starting to have an understanding of real money and feeling it in their hand. And this not only talks about economic sustainability, but it is early literacy and early numeracy in action. There are 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and they are interconnected and, like the pillars, must not be viewed in isolation. Next slide, please. There is a free online resource that was developed that literally goes through each of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and it highlights provocations, stories, text that you as early years practitioners and students could access to help support an understanding of the 3 pillars of sustainability and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. On the next slide is just an example of a provocation. So a question you could say is, do you think children can discuss societal sensitive issues? An example of that was a story was read to children aged between 2, 3 and 4. And the story was It's a No Money Day by Kate Milner. The children were reading the story with the practitioner, and they were seeing about how mum, who works really, really hard, has 3 jobs, but still does not have enough money for food in the fridge. And this highlighted to some children that others, and this was the development of empathy, and that sort of the children were starting to understand that some children do not always necessarily have food, and therefore extension ideas followed organically as a result of this provocation. It wasn't driven by the teacher, it was driven by the children's questions and thinking about their local environment, what they had seen in their own environment. They had seen in their local supermarket a food bank, and that led to questions about it because of the story. They explored then the idea of what poverty meant. What does it mean with the practitioner having an empty lunchbox when it was lunchtime and just demonstrating what it means to have no food. they explored the idea of what is a food hero rather than considering traditional police. And this was during COVID. So Marcus Rashford was the food hero that we discussed. As a result, the children felt moved to think about others, and that they thought, well, if children have no food, that they started to have conversations as Christmas was getting nearer and wondered whether children would be having Christmas presents too. And as a result of this, empathy was developing about how they were realizing that others may not be as fortunate as them. And as a consequence of that, they decided to contribute with their parents Christmas presents to local charities. Empathy is a key part of early childhood. And from an ecological perspective, we want children to just not only think about others from a human-centric perspective, but also from the hedgerow, the worm, the plants, the trees. We need children to be ecologically aware of every part of their planet. I hope I've demonstrated how the foundations of sustainability are laid in early childhood and why it is so crucial to you as future educators to embed them into your practice. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diane. That was absolutely wonderful. And what I really like about your presentation there and about sustainability matters in early childhood is those like case studies, those examples practitioners can see that are happening in other places, that it is doable, and making things real for those young children. They have to have real experiences. They have to make sense of the world around them. And I think that is so important. So thank you, Diane. Okay, our next speaker today is Zoe. Now, I had the pleasure of listening to Zoe at Sheffield Hallam University when we had stalled there a few months ago now for the MEE. And I've also visited Zoe's school, and I'm going to be working with her next month too. So it's really pleased that we've built this relationship. So Zoe, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Hi there, I'm Zoe Singh, and I am the Deputy Head Teacher at Dobcroft Nursery Infant School, which is in the south of Sheffield. We've got a preschool, there's around 300 children, and over the last 15 years or so, we have built up a programme of sustainability, climate action, things that we do that are embedded in our culture, really. And we started with Eco Schools, getting that award, and we're on our 15th year now. And it's just become part of what we do. So I just want to show you a little bit about what we've been doing, really. So I can move straight on from there. That's just me. I should say, if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I'm very happy for you to come and have a look at what we do, see our forest school, and have a look round, whatever you fancy. So people often ask me, where does sustainability sit strategically within the curriculum? Because it's so stretched already within primary schools that it needs to be woven through the rest of the curriculum and fit into things. So pretty much when I talk about this, particularly when I'm explaining it to people like Ofsted or other practitioners, actually it sits well within our personal development offer for the children. And the way that I talk about it is that this role of climate awareness in education has really grown in importance and urgency over the last few years, particularly. And as a school, we firmly believe, and we know that the knowledge and understanding of these global issues and the desire to act and have an impact comes from the early years. It starts in early childhood. So even though we pass our children on to the junior school at age 7, we think we're starting it right now, because if we start it in those early years, when we know between 3 and 5 is 0 to 5 is so crucial for these children's brain development. If we can start having those thoughts from day one, we really can have an impact. So things like the mental well-being part of this, you can see at the top of this diagram. What we do there is we try and instill like a hopefulness for the future and have a connection, so that they've got a connection with nature and an empathy for living things. And it was really interesting listening to Diane, actually, because everything she was saying, I was like, okay, we are doing things right. We're along the same things. Because even now you still think, because a lot of other schools maybe aren't doing as much as this. We think, are we doing the right things? But I actually really firmly believe that the more that we learn about this and the more that um, climate action and sustainability is being woven through curriculums, I feel like we might actually stand a chance of getting it officially getting it into curriculum. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? Citizenship, this gives the children the opportunity to develop those values like respect and responsibility, empathy, and the eco school sits firmly within that area. Development of character, so all those positive character traits, giving them the skills to be able to think critically, and analyze information that they're presented with, so that they understand that they've got the possibility to have personal responsibility in climate action and sustainability. And we do things, well, I'll talk about it later, where we write to Parliament and we try and have an impact on our community around these issues. Our wider opportunities, so things like we have a monthly gardening club where our sort of adult eco team and our children's eco team and anybody else who wants to get involved comes and helps within the school grounds, basically. And we've got lots of projects around improving biodiversity over the last few years, and I'll share those with you later. And then really around the British values, we have worked a lot around this, about championing sustainability and trying to reduce our carbon footprint as a result, and developing a respect for the world around us. So we've done that through our eco team and through our rights respecting team, so that we can develop all of these sort of early skills that make us have responsibility, collective responsibility and personal responsibility for the world around us and our communities. There's also things like I'm currently just writing. We've managed to make space in our geography curriculum specifically for a thread around sustainability, so that we can have sort of blocks of lessons that will run across year 1 and year 2, and we'll introduce it into foundation as well, around human processes. So having the space and time to be able to talk about human processes like deforestation and global warming, so that we can start to really introduce those early. That's not in the Key Stage 1 curriculum, but if we start it early, then so long as we work with the junior school, it can then be carried on. So we're quite excited about that. And then we've also got assemblies. So I run a block of assemblies that run over a 2-year period. And what they aim to do is we deal with all sorts of things around eco-anxiety, and that's in response to what the children have told us, that they are worried about things. And that's why I'm really keen around the hopefulness for the future as well. Things like having awareness of how they can have an impact on our community, and things like fast fashion, anything that the children come to me about, basically, I try to implement. So I leave a few spare that I can introduce key issues that children are involved with and are interested in. So we have climate action planning going on, and I've based it around these 4 pillars as the DFE have set out. So if we move on, I'll just talk about what we've done over the last few years for each one of these. So here I've just put some pictures up. So things like explicit education, but also lots of things that we offer within our wider personal development, but our goal is to reduce our carbon footprint. And one of the main ways we did this is we talked to the children, and you can see on the left hand side at the top there, we're a D, and that's actually quite a big deal for us. We're a 1960s school with loads of outside walls that are all glass, so we just leak energy. So it's taken us a long time. Schools to get above a D is pretty good. We're aiming to get a C, but that is hours of work, and well, days and weeks, actually, years. Our energy and utilities are 25% of our emissions, so we work on that all the time. We look at our transport, which obviously doesn't come into our energy efficiency, but it's another way that we talk to children about how we get to school and building those really healthy habits. We've got a series of bins that are run by a few members of my adult eco team, recycling hard to recycle goods. And that's raised us about £700 last year. So we have clothes, we have non like soft plastics, that kind of thing, that rubber gloves, there's another one for rubber gloves that gets sent off. All those different things are all in our car park. So not only our school community can access those, but also the wider community. We've done things around really looking at our energy usage, and we put lots of like data couples, that measured the temperature over the holidays. And what we found is that our heating was coming on at night time for no reason, just because the thermostat was saying we've got it coming on at anything below 6 degrees, but it was kicking in higher than that. And so what we've done is managed to manipulate all of that, and we've saved energy bills. So all of those things, so it's not just that's the economic side of it, but also from an energy point of view, if we can reduce the amount of gas we're using, that's obviously a brilliant thing. Meat Free Monday. So we now have Meat Free Monday, as many schools do. We're thinking of going to 2 days actually, because that's what our community is telling us that they would like to do. And we talk to the children about that. So we don't just do these things. These come as a result of talking to our local community, including the children and the adults and the parents, and then taking action on that. And the children see that they have a voice, so it really matters to them. We have our farm to fork, so we're really lucky. We've got a forest school which we've developed over the last few years, and we grow vegetables in there, and then we have a salad bar in our canteen, so that food goes directly into that salad bar, and the children see that what they grow they can eat. So it's really a connectedness to nature there. We have a second-hand uniform, and we've cut our new buying of uniform by 75% over the last 4 years. So now most of our uniform is second-hand for the new children starting our school, and that's been a real push. And we sell every item for £1, and everybody now donates at the end of their time with us at the school. They just donate all their clothes to us. We share our news, so the eco newsletters, we let everybody know in our community what we've been doing, and it sort of generates more stuff. And quite often people come to me and say, oh, can we get involved in X, Y, or Z? Or I've got an idea, can we do that? That is all great stuff for us. We do the Cut Your Carbon campaign every year, that's run through the eco schools, and that again is just involving the community, making sure that we have this dialogue going on, a conversation within the school. So it's just part of what we do. It isn't an add-on. It's just there all the time. And it isn't. And our children's eco team go around and do things like turn off all the lights and the whiteboards at lunchtime if they've been left on. But actually now they come to me and they're like, nobody's left any lights on. Isn't that amazing? And then we celebrate that in the eco newsletter, because it's just become part of what we do. You leave a room, you turn the light off. The transport, obviously, I mean, lots of schools are part of the WOW Walk to School, and what we do is we record that every day, so children get into the habit of saying how they've come to school. And if they do need to drive, we talk about parking and striding. So can you do that? Can you reduce your journeys, even if your parents do need to drive, so they can then go on to work from there? And our next steps are to sort out solar panels. So we're working with a parent who works for a solar panel company. So hopefully that will happen. Thank you. So then adaptation and resilience, this is an area of concern for us more and more. Over the last 3 years, we've really suffered with the heat. Overheating within the school. We're a south-facing school, and it is all glass fronted, like I say, and we don't have an awful lot of shade. All the forest school and woods that we have around the back of the school. So this is a priority for next year for us, because again, this last week has been really tough. So we're looking into solar. We're working with the eco team, both our adult and children eco team. We're talking about it in our Rights Respecting meetings. We are talking about getting additional shade within the playground, and also solar screening on the windows, because we recognise that this is going to be a problem going forward. We now, when we're choosing suppliers, part of that decision making process is not just economic anymore. We also look at whether or not they're sustainable and whether they have good morals and values around the planet, basically. So it's part of what we do. Here, what I've put our professional networks in around here. So we've worked with lots of organisations like the Rotherham Wildlife Trust. We host the Eco Teach Meet that happens every half term with the university, and we work with organisations like Early Education. And all of that network means that we're more likely to share best practice around these things. Also, we do things like we have a litter pick. So we have every time a class has their assembly, which we have one every half term. They also do a clean and weed and a litter pick. So all the parents that come to watch all go around afterwards. We do a litter pick and we do a clean and weed, which means basically everything, the school grounds just get a bit of a spruce. We talk about that from an environmental point of view as well. And we've done things like we push stop taps. The stop taps that you push have all been fitted across schools so that, we're minimising our water usage, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Biodiversity. This has been we have a project every year where we work on biodiversity because our school, although we had a forest school at the back, I'll show you the one in the middle, the 2022 to 23, it basically was unusable. And we took some advice from the Wildlife Trust, and they said that there really isn't that much biodiversity there because nothing can grow underneath it. So you've got one species and that's it. And so we took the big decision actually, because it was a big decision to cut it back and to start to introduce those sort of woodland plants and other. We took a lot of advice, and we've now built it into a space that is actually used every single day, and a lot of our outdoor learning is done there. So, and we actually won the Outdoor Learning Award for Sheffield Schools in 2023. Largely due to a lot of work that we did with our forest school and improving the biodiversity there and getting our learning outside. So a lot of the maths was done there, is done there, geography, science, there's a lot of learning goes on there. We have to book it out now so that you make sure you get your slot because it's now being used all the time. So it's gone from a space that had a small circle of wooden blocks to sit down on, where it was a bit tokenistic. People would go and read a story in there, or and there would be a certain element of, feeling enclosed in nature, but the outdoors weren't being used every day, and now they are. So the children are really getting an awareness of biodiversity, understanding nature. There's a beautiful old oak tree in there that is enormous, and there is a carpet of acorns, when they drop, and the children love it. We put in 2023-24, we worked with client ambassadors and the Sheffield and Rotherham Wildlife Trust to get a wildlife pond put in. So that was our project during that year, which has been really good. That's in another little area that we've got, and that's now used for pond dipping in our science curriculum. And there's also a nice area over there that is used with lots of different kinds of wildflowers in there. This year we're working on creating an eco greenhouse. There's a start of it there. We've actually going to add all the bottles on Monday night. So that's our gardening club on Monday night. That is the aim. We might get it done, we might not. We always do No Mow May. We're part of the National Education Nature Park, and also our community eco team. We're constantly selling plants. So we have plants so that it's like a plant share that we do so that people can share those within our community. And then climate education and green careers, this is the fourth pillar. As you can see, there's some external validation there where we won the Sheffield Schools Outdoor Learning Award. We have lots of assemblies where we'll perhaps bring in people from local shops. So there's a local fair trade shop that comes in to talk to us. There's a picture of the eco team there. They're very vocal They always have ideas. They have to apply to be part of our eco team. There's always many. There's there's a lot of people that want to do it because we do lots of fun stuff, and it's really difficult to choose. And it's representative from our preschool right the way up to year two. You can see some evidence of our outdoor learning there. We have a green day every year where there's just a whole day focus on our outdoor learning and learning about how we can look after our planet and have awareness of that. And also there's some evidence of how we take action. So we have the Rice Challenge, Fair Trade Rice Challenge. We did write to Rishi Sunak then when he was Prime Minister, and we also have a yearly action plan which the children feed into. Our library is full of appropriate books, and children often choose to take those out. So there's just a selection of little things that you would be able to do at your school fairly easy there, if that's okay. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zoe. And I think when I first listened to you at Sheffield Hallam, what I noticed was the mirror that I've been doing along, at the same time as you over all these years as well, and, I'm really proud that I work in an infant school. It's a really special kind of setting. It's a really lovely team. When you think over half your school is early years,
Yeah.
And I think that is so important. And like what you're saying about, and Diane was saying about, starting this early with children, our N1s now are going to be the class of 2038, 39, something like that. And Paul and I were talking about, there's lots of things about getting to certain targets by 2030.
Yeah.
And then I just think, these early years children need to know it now. And I just think, like all the things you're doing, I know we're doing at Diamond Wood, and we have a green day.
Yeah.
Planning our green day, and it's about being local action takers. It's about finding out about what's in your school environment. And I just, it is really lovely to see, and to see how it's in your, you're starting in your curriculum, and how, you've done eco schools, you've worked with nature parks. That's, we've done that as well. And now I found out about Ministry of Eco a few years ago, and using our framework. Now I've put in that early years. I'm hoping schools can use that in the provision. So thank you, Zoe. So Paul, do we want to, if we talk about our new early years bit now, and then we'll do questions? Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I don't know if we want to take other questions
Yeah, do you want to do questions
Dan and
first?
Zoe first. I don't know. Well, I had a question for Zoe. I think there's such a breadth, there's so much there. I was wondering how is it driven? Who's driving it? How did you find out about all these things? Because if it's yourself, it's amazing, but I wondered if there's a team or some people, or how that all works.
Yeah. So before me, there was a lady called Colette, and she drove a lot of the embedding of the practice. So she had a real drive, energy. It meant a lot to her. She started the Green Day, and then I have taken it over in the last 5 years or so. And because I'm in a privileged position in that I can have the strategy side of it, and I can, because I'm co-head teacher on some days, I can say, actually, this is what we should be teaching children. I think this is important. So I'm now in a really privileged position where I can sort of push that ethos. And I realise that not everybody is. And actually, one of the big things recently in the last couple of years that's been really helpful is there's a guy called Lee Jowett at Sheffield University, and he started to connect loads of people and organisations together through the Eco Teach Me, and that's been really useful. But really, it's just, I think once you start doing this sort of thing, people say to you, oh, I do this and I do that. And you meet other like-minded people. And then before you know it, you make a network, but it takes time. It is tricky.
I think one thing, just like Lee, and because he's one of the regional hub leaders for the climate ambassadors, I think there's a few initiatives now trying to really act like that as a kind of a hub almost, or a framework to really help So it saves teachers the time so that not everyone has to do exactly that same journey, because otherwise
Yes.
it takes so much energy and time. But the other piece I think as well, though, is that sense of how can we unlock sort of head teachers and people in senior leadership to really open this up? And I don't know, Diane, I don't know from your research if you know of anything that would help, because it feels like occasionally there are people who help make this happen. And Zoe, you're obviously one of these, an example of that. But there's also probably twice as many people who find an excuse and almost, there's other priorities that they think are more important. I don't know if anyone's got anything around that they wanted to say.
I think that it would. I think it's very good that the DfE released a strategy and update, but I think that it would be more beneficial if it became a statutory part of the early years curriculum, because at the moment it is just on the periphery. And majority of times when I'm doing training or meeting people, they say, well, it's not, Ofsted aren't looking for it, or it's not a requirement. And so I think until it becomes something that is actually written down as a requirement,
Mm.
then I think more people will engage with it, because and I think the other thing is that it's still just not understood. If you say what sustainability is, I just don't think people realize what it is. And so I think we've still got a long way to go. And what is the most significantly sad is that out of the SDGs that were signed in 2015, of which the UK government was one, that target 12.81 says that all education policy, curriculum, and student assessment must incorporate the Sustainable Development Goals and sustainability. And we are nowhere near that in England. At least Scotland and Wales are addressing it, but we aren't. So it's little steps, and we all just carry on. But sometimes it is quite disheartening.
Mm.
Um,
I think that came through, Diane, though. Sorry, that point around beyond the environment and nature, because I do think, and actually a lot of primary schools maybe fall into this trap more than others, where they think about sustainability as only being around the environment, and also
mm,
as a sort of a single issue. But I mean, Zoe, that's what's come across with your presentation, that breadth as well, where this permeates every single aspect of the
mm,
school and what the school is about. And also, Diane, where you were talking about the economic part as well, the financial bit, and how that fundamentally is a part of sustainability as well. I think as an organization, we as the Ministry of Education are really trying to kind of work from the ground up and galvanize that sort of sense of urgency, but also recognize that it would be so much easier if the government just turned that switch and made it part
mm.
of policy. But my understanding is that this curriculum and assessment review doesn't touch on the early years. Is that?
I think it little. I mean, it mentions sustainability, but still not enough. But it's yeah, it's just disheartening, because you just feel as though you're banging your head on a brick wall all the time. And the MPs put posts out on Facebook that they're doing this, that, and the other, and they believe in it, but then nothing changes.
I think
I
it's
don't want to sound I don't want to sound
I know, because
negative,
I think
but
there's a
it
reality to this,
sometimes
isn't
is a
there?
bit negative.
People have been in this space for decades and it hasn't necessarily moved as fast as it needs to. But maybe a
No.
positive light of this, and maybe this is, I don't, Hannah, is something also that you wanted to touch on before we move on, obviously, to the next bit, was also just that sense of, well, maybe we can also show how focusing on sustainability brings so much more other benefits, that it's not just, you can kind of get people's buy-in for other reasons as well. And I know, Hannah, you've got loads of stories of that where you've gone, well, actually, we're doing this not necessarily because it's about that thing. It helps us do this other thing.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's really important, connecting with nature, being physical, you know, it helps young children develop, so the earlier we get them outside, the earlier they're connected with nature, the better. And, it's not just about, oh, we're going to do this because we're doing it, because then it's done. It's about embedded it. It's about, getting the children connected. It's getting your early years curriculum there. So you've got your in your provision, you've got your sustained shared thinking, you've got your collaboration. And at Diamond Wood, we've been doing that for a long time, and it's something that we really care about. And then that's what I've put into the provision plans for the Ministry of Eco Education for. early years.
Is it
Um,
Hannah, also the thing that's maybe a bit I don't want to say it's completely novel for your school. I'm sure it's the same for many settings, but you've got quite a diverse community, and both culturally and in terms of language, and
yeah,
you're using the environment as a way to sort of unlock some of that language and
yeah.
explore those barriers. Is that something we want to talk about?
Yeah, yes. So I mean, we have children who come to school with little or no language. A lot do not have English as a first language. And what we do is, in nursery, we get them outside. We look at that knowledge of the world. We look at that science and the geography, and we make sure they experience real things. So they've got that oracy before they've got anything else. We make sure that, they've got in the mud kitchen, they've got the mud on their hands. Which they've squeezed, they've dug, they've found a worm. They know what a worm is called. They've looked after that worm. Um, you know, one of my little boys this week was like, he wanted to find the ladybirds because he's an N2 now, and he was an N1 last year, and he's an N2, and he knows exactly where those ladybirds are, and they're not there. So he's questioning, well, why aren't the ladybirds there? Last year, I know they were there because I went out and I did my shape hunt and I looked and I did my summer hunt. Well, why aren't they there this year? And I think, he's only just gone four and he's realised there aren't as many ladybirds this year, so I think it is important. And, we've always said, we want children to be in a language rich environment. And for me, being outside and experiencing the world around you is the most important thing.
Should we, Hannah, is this a moment for you to be able to share some of your yeah, piece?
Yeah, yeah. So, as Paul said, we've developed our early years framework in the Ministry of Education, Eco Education. So for our 7 areas, we've pulled all the best resources from around as we do, and we've looked at the early years curriculum. So for each area, we've got a big question. So for nature, we've got what is outdoors. And this is really good because I think this is every season. I think, oh, this is my best season. This is the best season to do this. And then you start in autumn, you're like, oh, yeah, we can go out and get our collection bags. So Meryl will love this because she loves, I always have little props and things made out of like cereal boxes. So in autumn, you go out and you collect your autumn treasures and you can explore them. Um, in transport, I've got where, the big question about where can we go? And, do we need to go in a car? Could we go on a bus? What is the best way to do? What best way to get about? And like you were saying, Zoe, we've just started Little Feet in nursery, which is one of the like walk once a week and strategies like that. And our children, a lot of our children do walk to school, so that's really important. Food, which is really topical in nursery at the moment because the nursery children are helping Eco Council plant up their veg box. Um, so where does their food come from? And like you say, having the salad bar in, our children have been tasting the salad that's already growing. Um, and then looking at society, which again, looking at those pillars that Diane was talking about, um, who will look after our world, so I've linked lots of lovely books and books that are good for little hands as well. Um, and in that society question, we've got thinking about green jobs. So, we do people who help us. But with that, you could do, well, people who help the world. Who are these people? What job is that? Very early green careers, but yeah, well, you might be a climate scientist, the world is your oyster. Um, and then we in society as well, just starting with a bit of voting. So voting for their favourite eco book. Something you could do really easily in a key worker session. Some pine cones, conkers, cubes, just to show, oh, well, this many people want to read I Love the Earth, and this many people want to read Tidy. So actually, we've got 10 people that want to read I Love the Earth, and we've got 6 that want to read Tidy. So we're going to read I Love the Earth today. Okay, because we've voted and that's fair. Um, Looking at waste, is it all rubbish? So my children at the moment love a bit of composting. So we're getting out and we're weeding and we're composting because we've got onions and garlic growing. Um, energy? Can you feel the force? So, um, up in Yorkshire, it does get very windy. So, making kites out of scrap materials, your junk box modeling, old bags, so we use Fair and Funky's ideas here to make plastic bag kites, but you can use other materials as well. Um, and then water, what's in the water, and about children being change makers. So my school is probably the school that's right in the middle of the country, that's the furthest from the coast, for like doing like marine things, but we've got rivers and canals, talking about the rubbish that goes into them. You can set that up in your provision in your water tray to get the rubbish out of the water. Why are we doing that? Because we're protecting the animals, we're caring for nature, we are being change makers, we're making a difference. Um, so I think that it's very new is our this early years bit, but we'd love people to come and help us run with that, see what they think, see how they can put it into their provision. So I think that's the important thing in early years. It's not like a standalone lesson where it's this. It's about getting stuck in, getting involved, going with the children's interests. And I think that's what we need to be doing with those 2, 3, 4 year olds, 5 year olds in reception, we know we've got to get them to early learning goal. We know that's the end of early years and we want a good level of development. But if they've got all this behind them, as well as everything else, all these wonderful practitioners are doing, we're going to have this class of, what did I work it out, 20, 38, 39, being going into finishing their GCSEs and going into the world with maybe a green career. And I just think that's so important.
Well, thank you so much for that, Hannah. I was just going to take a moment as well to share the website and just show how people can access this. So, every school in the country is set up for access to this. It's their main school email address, um, and a password that we can share with you. Um, but it's that framework idea, isn't it? So we've all talked so much about, there's so much out there. What we've been really trying to do is create a logical framework to then fit it within the curriculum, kind of recognizing that the core of what schools do is the day-to-day lessons. And if you want to make a school sustainable, it really has to be woven throughout the day-to-day teaching. And so this is partly also informed by Dale Vince and his kind of experience in the business world as well. So he first set up a business, Ecotricity, based around energy because that was our largest source of carbon emissions. It's now in the UK transport, that's our largest source of carbon emissions, but actually transport, energy and food make up 80% of our carbon emissions. And then obviously nature is also that really fundamental part and thing that we should always consider. So we've got these four things, and then also society, waste and water as a way to kind of break apart sustainability, because again we've talked about that over the call. This word can be a bit meaningless and it can be banded around, but actually this is the framework that we think is a useful way to explore these things. And again, these themes have come through in lots of what everyone else has been saying, but this is quite a useful tick list for people looking at their curriculum, and you can think, actually, are we covering all of these sorts of bases? Have we got aspects that cover all of this? And I think from what Zoe said, I probably could have ticked them all about 4 or 5 times in terms of all the different things that she's doing. When you click in through, though, what we have framed this around are big questions, because again, like pedagogically, we think that exploring the world and asking questions is a really important and fundamental way to do this. And so we've got more than 60 or 70 of these kinds of big questions that frame a series of lessons. And that's what Hannah was just sort of describing there. Now, the core of these, most of them are for primary school at Key Stage 1 and 2. And then we've got for each of them, just as Hannah described, one that is signposted as early years, and it's a slightly more simplistic question. And it's more appropriate for the age group. And when you click on that, you can see then it's linked through to the national curriculum, so it shows you how this achieves the national curriculum. It also, just as Diana was saying, it links to the SDGs. It shows you which of those that it weaves through. It's got a summary of the key ideas. What are the things that we're trying to get across in this? And then there's a whole series. This is like a menu of opportunity, just as Hannah was describing there. What I would say though is also for anyone at any age, the questions in here with a kind of the autonomy and with the experience of being a teacher, you could weave and use these as inspiration. So just as much of what we're trying to do is affect inspiration and kind of support teachers. I'll just jump into another of the sort of ages, is Carbon a Magic Ingredient. And you can see this is what the primary level ones, they're a bit more complex and they kind of, but they pull together, just as the early years do, resources from kind of all different organizations, and the idea being just to help support teachers and make it easier for them. Um, so that is available to every teacher in the country, and we're supporting teachers in about 11,500 schools. So there are lots of teachers using this, and what we're trying to do is then help with that, amplifying best practice, sharing all of the opportunities from all these organizations, and so hopefully, yeah, there's something in there for everyone, because there isn't one solution, is there, Hannah? It's
No, there
kind of,
isn't.
and we've heard that already, haven't we? Really, there's
Yeah.
just trying lots of things. I appreciate we're about to run out of time.
Yeah.
I think I was possibly going to put people on the spot and say, is there one takeaway, one thing that you think, um, like a teacher could maybe do or think of? Is there one kind of piece of advice you might give? I don't know, Hannah, is there something that you to start off would think?
I think just go outside. I think that's the simplest thing you can do with your children. Go outside and just soak in nature and let children experience awe and wonder. And let, go with the children, go with their learning and use our framework.
That sounds great, Hannah. Thank you. Zoe, did you want to go next?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say something similar, but I suppose also go and talk to your senior leadership team. If you're really interested in this, if you go and say, I would really like to um, make this something just part of what we do, I'm sure they'll go with you, because they will say, okay, because if the best way to get people moving within a school and it actually becoming embedded and something that people care about is by getting buy-in from everybody. And I think if you can bring that from the top down as well as from the bottom up, you get a better impact. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Diane?
I would just sort of like build on the idea of an ecological development in reiterating the importance of children having a non-human centric perspective to ensure that they recognize that they have to be advocates for the non-human world. And that if they don't learn to speak for the worm and the hedgerow, who will? Because they will be in 20 years' time, hopefully, the people who are on the planning departments and if they've had this sort of like love of the planet from the early years, then hopefully that will have stayed with them.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your experience. Yeah, both of you. It's really evident the kind of work and expertise you've got in these spaces. Hannah, is there anything else you wanted to say before we finish?
No, I just really like to thank Zoe and Diane for giving up their time and talking to us. It's been lovely to get different perspectives, I think. And I think early years as well. I think early years teams are very they like bouncing off ideas from each other. They like seeing other people's settings, and drawing on best practice. And I think that's, it's a really important thing. So yeah, it's just been brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, and so we will be sharing the recording. We'll share people's contact details, and I think it's all right with also sharing the presentations as well. So we'll make sure everything's available, and hopefully this leads to further conversations. Hopefully
Yeah.
it's sparked, and there's something that everyone's seen that they're interested in more. So thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. See you later.